Ever wonder how the nicest guy in the room ends up looking like the angry boyfriend everyone warns you about? I'm talking about the man who opens doors, remembers birthdays, and would rather bite his tongue than raise his voice. A man raised to believe patience and respect are the golden rules of love. Yet, fast forward a few months into the wrong relationship, and something flips. The calm, steady communicator starts snapping. The guy who used to solve problems with logic now sounds frustrated, even hostile. He begins to feel like a stranger to himself. Here's the uncomfortable truth. He didn't just lose control. He was trained. Not on purpose, not with malice, but trained through tiny, repeated interactions. Interactions so subtle that neither partner notices until it's too late. And that's the heartbreak. Good men, men who value kindness, end up believing that respect doesn't work, that patience is useless, that the only language their partner will respond to is anger. This isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a cultural one, because every time a patient man learns that rage works better than calm honesty, we all pay the price. Relationships crumble, trust erodes, and the men most determined to do things right are the ones most sticky to be broken. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain. I'll show you the hidden cycle that slowly turns patient men into angry men, and more importantly, how to break it before it breaks you. So how does this transformation actually begin? The answer is almost never with shouting. No man wakes up one morning, looks in the mirror, and says, "Today, I'm going to become the angry guy." It doesn't happen that way. The shift begins in silence, with something small, with something easy to brush off. Picture this. A man who prides himself on patience notices something that bothers him. Maybe it's the girlfriend who is always late, leaving him waiting 20, 30, even 40 minutes while she scrolls through her phone, finishing her makeup, or chatting with friends. Maybe it's at dinner, when she cuts him off mid-sentence, laughing at her own story while his words hang in the air. Maybe it's when she spends money without telling him, or flirts a little too freely at a party. These aren't catastrophes. They're small cuts. But small cuts, repeated, create wounds. And because he is the good guy, he handles it the right way. He doesn't slam doors. He doesn't shout. He takes a breath and says gently, "Hey, when you interrupted me last night, I felt dismissed." He expects understanding, maybe an apology, maybe just acknowledgement. But instead, what does he get? Silence. Or worse, deflection. "You're overreacting. Don't be so sensitive. Why are you trying to control me?" Now pause here. Most men in this moment don't get angry. Not right away. They get confused. This is the first stage of conditioning. He wonders, wait, did I say it wrong? Did I choose the wrong time? Maybe I should soften it more. So he tries again. Different words, softer tone. He waits for a calmer moment. Maybe after dinner. Maybe on the weekend. Maybe he even focuses on his feelings instead of her actions, because he's read about I statements in relationship books. And what happens? Same result. Ignored, dismissed, invalidated. His calm honesty bounces off like a pebble thrown at a wall. This is the exact moment the invisible training begins. Without realizing it, she is teaching him a brutal lesson. Respectful communication doesn't work here. Calm words equal no results. Patience equals invisibility. And remember, human brains are wired for survival. We don't keep repeating what fails. We adapt. Think of it like a lab experiment. She becomes the scientist, though she doesn't realize she's running tests. He becomes the subject, though he doesn't realize he's being studied. Every time she ignores his calm words, the experiment continues. Every time she reacts only to escalation, she sets the conditions for the next phase. Now, here's the critical part. The patient man does not want to be angry. He fights against it. At this stage, he tries everything else first. Humor, more romance, different timing. Maybe he brings up the issue after a good date night, hoping affection will make her listen. He tries persistence, repeating himself with kindness. But nothing breaks through. And deep inside, frustration begins to simmer. His patience, once a source of pride, starts to feel like weakness. His respect, once his guiding principle, starts to feel like a handicap. Then comes the breaking point. One day, after months of small cuts, he finally snaps. He raises his voice, not even yelling, maybe just sharper, firmer, louder than before. And instantly, everything changes. She listens. She reacts. She answers the very concern she ignored for months. Maybe she apologizes. Maybe she even promises to change. But the damage is already done. In that moment, the trap snaps shut. Because his brain has just learned a powerful, poisonous lesson. Anger works where respect failed. And that is the first step on the road where the patient man becomes the angry man. Once anger works for the first time, something shifts. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like gravity. He didn't want to yell. He resisted for months. But now his nervous system has logged the result. Calm equals silence. Anger equals action. And once that equation is stored, it starts repeating itself almost automatically. At first, he resists the lesson. He tells himself, that was a one-time thing. I'll never do that again. He feels guilty, maybe even ashamed. But the brain is a fast learner. Like a gambler who just hit the jackpot after losing 20 hands in a row, the brain whispers, "See? This is what works. Do it again." That's how the loop forms. She doesn't pay attention until he escalates. He doesn't get results unless he escalates. And over time, both of them become trapped in a system neither of them consciously built. From her side, she begins to anticipate his frustration. She may not notice the calm requests at all anymore, but when his voice sharpens, she reacts quickly. Not because she suddenly respects him, but because conflict feels dangerous. From his side, he starts to feel like patience is a waste of energy. The fastest way to get heard is to cut to the chase, raise the volume. This is the hidden trap of conditioning. It doesn't just solve one problem, it rewires the whole relationship dynamic. And soon, the man faces 3 possible paths. Path 1: escalation. This is the most common. Slowly, the rare outburst becomes routine. The last resort becomes the default. He goes from being the patient man who occasionally gets angry to the angry man who occasionally shows patience. Think of it like coffee. At first, 1 cup wakes you up, but over time, you need 2, then 3. The body adapts. Anger works the same way. What once took a raised voice now requires a sharper tone, harsher words, maybe even slamming a door. The dosage keeps increasing. The tragedy: he doesn't even want to live this way. Each time he raises his voice, a piece of him feels ashamed. But another part feels addicted, because it's the only tool that consistently works. That's why I call this anger addiction, not because he enjoys it, but because he depends on it. Path 2: collapse. Some men go the opposite direction. They hate what anger turns them into, So they shut down completely. They stop bringing up their needs. They stop setting boundaries. They stop believing their voice matters at all. They become ghosts in their own relationships, physically present, but emotionally absent. They go along with whatever she wants, not because they agree, but because they've given up hope of being heard. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. At first, it looks like peace. No arguments, no yelling. But underneath, resentment builds like a slow leak in a pipe. It doesn't disappear. It spreads. Over time, he becomes passive-aggressive, cold, or emotionally unavailable. He trades his voice for temporary harmony, but loses his self-respect in the process. Path 3. The exit. This path is rare, but it's the healthiest. Some men recognize the trap and refuse to keep playing. They realize, if calm communication never works here, then staying means sacrificing who I am. So they leave. This requires self-awareness and courage, because walking away doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means he values his integrity more than a dysfunctional peace. It's choosing long-term strength over short-term survival. So here's the real question. Which road does he take? The truth is, most men don't consciously choose. They slide. They drift into escalation or collapse without realizing what's happening. Only the few who see the system clearly manage to take the exit before it breaks them. And that's why this stage is so dangerous. Once the anger loop starts, the man isn't just fighting with his partner, he's fighting with himself, with his values, with the kind of man he wants to be. This isn't just about saving one relationship, it's about saving his identity. So why does this loop feel so impossible to escape? Because it's not just about personalities, it's about psychology. The mind runs on reinforcement, and once a pattern is reinforced enough times, it feels like truth. It begins with something I call selective response. Think of it like a filter. Calm communication feels optional. Angry communication feels urgent. Imagine this. He says, "I'd appreciate it if you text when you're running late." Her brain registers it as a suggestion. She nods, maybe smiles, maybe says she'll try. But the request slips to the bottom of her mental list, competing with emails, errands, and Instagram notifications. Now, imagine he says with a sharper tone, "I'm tired of you being late all the time." Her brain reacts completely differently. That doesn't feel optional. That feels like a crisis. Suddenly, she pays attention. Not because she values the message more, but because the tone feels threatening to the peace she assumed was guaranteed. This difference in reaction is small, but repeated enough times, it rewires the relationship. It teaches him that calm equals background noise, while anger equals action. And his brain, designed by evolution to repeat what gets results, begins to shift toward anger as the default language. Here's where it gets sneakier. Both partners or divers misinterpret what's happening. She thinks his anger proves the issue must have been more serious than she realized. He thinks her response proves she finally understands his perspective. Both are wrong. The issue was always serious. What changed wasn't the importance, it was the volume. This is the urgency illusion. It convinces both of them that escalation was necessary, when really, escalation was just the only thing that broke through. And because they both misread the moment, the cycle strengthens. But the most devastating part is what comes next. I call it the respect recession. In healthy relationships, calm and respectful communication is treated like valuable currency. A man's voice, spoken with patience, carries weight. But in this toxic cycle, that same currency gets devalued. Every time she ignores his calm words, she unintentionally sends the message, "Your respectful voice has no value here." Every time she reacts to his anger, she sends the opposite message, "Only intensity buys my attention." Over time, he starts to believe it. His patience feels useless. His respect feels powerless. His calm honesty feels like monopoly money in a relationship economy that only trades in anger. And the tragedy? She doesn't connect the dots. From her perspective, he's simply becoming more aggressive, more unreasonable. She doesn't see how her dismissals trained him to escalate. In her mind, he changed for no reason. The result is a feedback loop of mutual disrespect. He loses respect for her because she forces him to yell. She loses respect for him because he yells. And both fail to see their own role in creating the very cycle that's destroying their bond. Now think about what this does to the man's psyche. Society tells him anger is toxic, that raising his voice is abusive, that real men stay calm no matter what. But his relationship teaches him the opposite lesson, that anger is the only way to be heard. This puts him in a cruel double bind. If he escalates, he feels ashamed. If he stays calm, he feels invisible. Either way, he loses. It's like being told to win a game where every move is wrong. Stay patient, and nothing changes. Get angry, and you hate yourself afterward. Slowly, the man starts to feel trapped, not just by his partner, but by his own identity. And this is the heart of the cycle. Selective response trains him to escalate. The urgency illusion convinces them both it was necessary. The respect recession erodes the very foundation of the relationship. What started as a minor pattern of ignored conversations turns into a system that reshapes who he is, how he communicates, and how both partners see each other. And unless this system is interrupted, the patient man takes one more step toward becoming the angry man, every single day. The most frightening part of this cycle is how slowly it takes hold. It doesn't show up overnight. It doesn't explode in one fight. It creeps in quietly, like water seeping through cracks in a wall. At first, you barely notice it. But over time, the entire foundation weakens. In the first month, he notices something that feels off. She is late. She interrupts. She dismisses a concern. He speaks up gently, believing respect will solve it. She brushes it aside. He shrugs it off and tells himself she was distracted, or tired, or just not in the right mood. His faith is still intact. He still believes patience works. 3 months in, he has tried multiple approaches. He chooses softer words, better timing, even the so-called I statements he once read about. None of it changes anything. Now the doubt begins to creep in. He wonders if maybe he is the problem. Maybe he is too sensitive. Maybe he is not explaining clearly. He doesn't lose his patience yet, but he starts to lose confidence in his own perception of reality. By the 6th month, his frustration has grown heavier. He has used every respectful tool in his toolbox, and nothing has worked. He still resists anger, but patience now feels less like a strength and more like a weakness. For the first time, he wonders if maybe the old saying is true. Maybe nice guys really do finish last. 9 months in, resentment has taken root. He still refuses to become the man who yells at his partner, but every dismissal feels sharper, more personal. He bottles it up, and it leaks in subtle ways, through sarcasm, through colder tones, through emotional distance. She may not notice, but inside, he is boiling. By the 12th month, something inside him snaps. It doesn't have to be screaming. Sometimes it's just a sharper tone, a harder edge, louder than usual. But for the first time, she listens. She reacts. She apologizes. And in that moment, the conditioning is complete. Respect failed. Anger worked. The lesson is burned into his nervous system. This is how character erodes, not in one dramatic moment, but in slow motion. He didn't decide to become angry. He was trained into it, one ignored request at a time. And once that lesson is learned, it rarely stays contained to one relationship. He begins to carry it with him. At work, he becomes the manager who snaps in meetings because calm instructions never seem to move the team. At home, he becomes the father who raises his voice at his children, even though he swore he would never repeat his own father's mistakes. With friends, he becomes the short-tempered guy who snaps when he feels unheard. Anger spreads like dye in water. A few drops at first, but soon the whole glass is colored. What started as a coping mechanism in one relationship begins to shape his entire identity. And the cruelest part is what it does to his sense of self. The man who once believed patience was his strength now feels powerless without anger. The man who once wore respect like a badge of honor now sees it as a liability. He looks in the mirror and wonders if he was ever really patient, or if he was just pretending all along. This is the tragedy of the patient man's paradox. The more patient he was at the beginning, the harder he falls in the end. Patience gave the cycle time to run its full course. An impatient man escalates early, and at least the dynamic is visible right away. But a patient man gives hundreds of chances, thousands of calm words, before finally breaking. By the time he does, the conditioning is so deep it feels irreversible. His greatest strength becomes the very weapon that destroys him. And unless the pattern is interrupted, the patient man doesn't just lose his relationship. Piece by piece, he loses himself. So the real question becomes, how do you stop this before it destroys both people? Because by the time anger feels like the only option, the damage is already underway. The solution is not to shout louder. It's not to stay silent either. The answer is prevention, training the relationship to value respect before the cycle even begins. For women, it starts with awareness. Calm words might sound less urgent, but that doesn't mean they are less important. When a man speaks patiently, it can be easy to dismiss, especially in the chaos of everyday life. But every time a calm request goes ignored, a dangerous lesson is being taught. Treat calm communication as valuable. Don't wait for his tone to sharpen before you pay attention. You don't have to agree with every request, but you do have to acknowledge it. Sometimes, a simple sentence is enough. I hear you. Let's talk about it later tonight. That one sentence tells him his words matter. It tells him respect works, and that small shift can change the entire direction of the relationship. For men, the responsibility looks different. You can't just hope your partner values your patience. You have to make it clear from the beginning. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They are clarity. Early in a relationship, you might say, I believe in solving problems calmly. If that doesn't work for us, maybe we're not compatible long-term. That's not controlling. That's protecting yourself from being trained into someone you don't want to become. This kind of clarity also acts like a filter. Some women will hear that and respect it. Others will hear it and push back, dismissing it as unnecessary. And that's the point. Better to know early than to spend years eroding your character in a system that only rewards anger. Of course, not everyone sets these boundaries early. Many men find themselves already deep in the cycle, unsure how to reverse it. If you are in that position, the first step is to recognize the pattern out loud. Instead of exploding, say, I feel like you only listen when I raise my voice. "That's not the kind of man I want to be." And if that's the only way to be heard here, we have a problem. That statement does two things. It communicates the pain of the cycle, and it places responsibility on both partners to change it. But let's be honest, sometimes the change won't come, and that's where men face the hardest choice. Do you sacrifice your values to keep the relationship alive? Or do you walk away to protect who you are? One path teaches you that your integrity can be bent under pressure. The other teaches you that your integrity is non-negotiable. Neither choice is easy, but the second one keeps you aligned with yourself. For women, there's also a moment of decision. Do you really want a man who can only get through to you when he's angry? Most women say they want respect, kindness, patience. But here's the truth. If you ignore those qualities, you will kill them. If you punish patience with indifference, you will eventually be left with only anger. And the man you once admired for his calm strength will become someone you can't recognize. The goal here is not to eliminate anger completely. Anger will always exist, and sometimes it's even healthy. It can signal urgency, danger, or deep emotional investment. But anger should be rare. It should be the fire alarm, not the daily conversation. When anger becomes the default tool for communication, everyone loses. So prevention is about training both partners differently. When he speaks respectfully, respond with respect, even if you disagree. When she dismisses your calm words, don't bury them or explode. Address the pattern directly. And if nothing changes, be willing to leave. Because staying in a system that rewards only anger is not love. It's self-destruction disguised as commitment. Think of it this way. Every relationship is like teaching a language. If you reward calm words, you'll both learn to speak calmly. If you only respond to shouting, you'll both end up fluent in anger. Which language do you want your love to speak? The patient man has to decide whether to protect his values or trade them for temporary peace. The woman has to decide whether to reward respect or ignore it until it dies. And together, they have to choose whether the relationship will be built on calm connection or constant escalation. Because once the cycle takes hold, it doesn't just cost the relationship. It costs the man his self-respect. And it costs the woman the very kind of partner she claims to want. Prevention is not just about saving love. It's about saving identity. At the end of the day, this story isn't just about one man or one woman. It's about the culture we're building, conversation by conversation, relationship by relationship. Every time a patient man learns that calm words don't matter, and anger does, we all lose something valuable. We lose good men who once believed patience was strength. We lose the possibility of love that grows through respect instead of fear. We lose trust because both partners stop believing the other truly hears them unless conflict explodes. The greatest tragedy is that the men most committed to doing things right are often the ones who get broken by this cycle. Their patience, their kindness, their steady voice, qualities that should be admired, are slowly turned against them. The very men who want to protect love end up feeling forced to destroy it. And when those men lose faith in respect as a tool, the damage doesn't stop at romance. It spills into families, workplaces, and communities. The patient boyfriend becomes the angry husband. The calm father becomes the short-tempered parent. The kind colleague becomes the one who snaps under pressure. The erosion spreads. But here's the hope. Once you see the pattern, you can refuse to play the game. If you're a man, you don't have to let a relationship train you into someone you don't respect. Protect your values. Speak with clarity. draw boundaries. And if those boundaries are never respected, be willing to walk away. That's not weakness, that's strength. Because no love is worth losing yourself. If you're a woman, recognize the power you hold. When a man speaks with patience, you're not just hearing his words, you're shaping who he becomes. If you dismiss his calm voice, you risk turning him into someone neither of you will like. If you value it, you reinforce the very qualities you claim to want. Respect his respect. Reward his patience. Respond before frustration becomes what? Because respect should never require volume. Patience should never be punished with indifference. Anger should never be the only language left on the table. This is bigger than relationships. It's cultural. We are creating a society where the most respectful men feel silenced, and only anger cuts through the noise. If that continues, we don't just lose individual men, we lose trust, peace, and the possibility of healthier connections for everyone. So ask yourself, in your relationships, are you teaching calm words that they matter? Or are you teaching that only escalation gets results? Are you rewarding respect? Or are you slowly bankrupting it until all that's left is the poverty of anger? If this message made you pause, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Ask yourself how you've contributed to the cycle, and more importantly, how you can break it. Because too many men are quietly becoming versions of themselves they hate. Too many women don't realize they are part of the training process. And too many relationships are burning out not because of big betrayals, but because of small dismissals repeated again and again. We can change this, one couple at a time, one conversation at a time, by choosing to value respect before volume. By treating patience as power instead of weakness, we can rewrite the story. The patient man doesn't have to become the angry man, but he will if we keep ignoring what respect deserves. The choice is in front of us every day. To build relationships that grow stronger through kindness, or to keep playing a game where only anger wins. Choose carefully, because when respect dies, love soon follows. And when patient men are forced into anger just to be heard, everyone loses. Thank you for watching. If this message hit you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe, dive deeper into our content, and start building the mindset that puts you back in control. Drop a comment below. What's the biggest struggle you want us to break down next? Let's build a brotherhood of men who rise above confusion and reclaim their power. See you in the next video.